Welcome to our Finish Line Quick Start series. This session covers the Due Date Monitor Quick Start and basic reporting. To begin, I'm going to log in as the Open Balance person and set up a new staff. Going to Due Date Setup Utilities, that's the ribbon at the top of the screen, and choosing Enter Edit Staff, third icon from the left. The screen opens in Add mode. I'm going to add David Martin. The ID can be alphanumeric up to 10 characters. Clicking on the permissions and options. This is a small firm, so I'm going to use a simple password. I use David's initials. The password is required. Moving back to the first tab, I'm going to click on the record selector on the left side to force the save. Saving is transparent. I don't have to force the save. For example, if I change his middle initial and I close the screen and reopen, choose David Martin, you can see that save took place automatically. You can also scroll through the records alphabetically by using the Form Tools ribbon to choose A to Z. That's sensitive to the field where I'm currently located. And now I can scroll through records. Can also make a change and save it simply by scrolling to the next record. That's a very efficient way to manage your database information quickly. The bottom left is the navigation bar that's used for scrolling on a form view. The arrow with the asterisk opens up a new record space when a record is already on the screen. You can also do that by the Form Tools ribbon and clicking the New button. Deleting a record, click the record selector and press the delete key on your keyboard, or use the Form Tools ribbon and choose Delete Record. When I make a record edit that I don't want, notice there's a pencil at this point that has not been saved to the database. So I can press the escape key. Sometimes you have to press it twice. When you see the pencil become an arrow, you know that that's been abandoned. The reason we opened the staff screen first is you want to add your staff, determine who should be a system manager or a staff level user. For example, Sally has been set up with staff level rights. In our small firm, Sally doesn't have the right to complete tasks or delete them, but she can update their progress. It's just an example of how varying rights are going to fit into your particular firm. Small firms generally have everybody listed as a system manager. It's wide open. If rights are important, I recommend that once you've set up your staff people, go back and at least change the password for the opening balance person. I wouldn't remove that person just in case you get locked out. You'll always have a fail-safe. You won't have to call tech support. So we've covered some basics about screen navigation, how to delete records, how to edit them. Saving is transparent. We've also touched a little bit on the Form Tools ribbon, which I would encourage you to explore. It has a lot of powerful features. Let's move on now to our global settings for due date, master tasks permissions. In our small firm, when we're in the Manage Edit Deadline screen, we only want to see the tasks and forms that are not complete. But I could change that to show all activities. Not complete will be the default filter. It can be overridden when you're in that screen. I also may want to prevent staff from completing or deploying tasks or forms. If I do, I want to check that box. Press F1 to get some detailed help on each of these permission settings. Now, a moment ago we set up David Martin. I need to go into the individual user permissions, highlight David. You see none of his permissions are set right now. I'm going to allow those permissions to be edited, and since it's a small firm, I'm going to use the convenient last button here to set his permissions to full access. That makes a few changes that I do need to save. Now, medium firms, larger firms are going to want to go in and select groups of staff and modify specific permission for those staff groups. That's covered a little bit more in a future session on workflow. Let's continue by clicking on the third tab, Master Tasks and Forms, and let's set up 2 additional tasks. We already have 4 in here. I'm going to set up quarterly compilation work, and I'm going to base it on the fiscal year of the client. So here is our frequency, quarterly, fiscal year end. I'd like to start it on the bottom footer section, the first month after the quarter. First day would be ideal. And I'd like to complete it by the 21st of the month. Now, I'm going to set up one more item, a form. Small business return. And checking on the frequency, yearly, fiscal year end. And I'd like to target that for starting the first month after the year end sometime. I know I do need to finish it by the third month, the 15th day, with a 6-month extension. Now, our Canadian users should probably use the tasks, and under the frequency you have also the yearly and fiscal year end frequency. So a task will accomplish what you need for your individual GST returns and so on. In the US, we use the US form year convention, so the 2011 form is filed in 2012. So the forms in the US follow that convention. That can be confusing with fiscal year ends, so if you are a Canadian taxpayer, use the task. One other reason to use the form has to do with estimated tax payments. So you can set up your estimated, which are not truly quarterly, and pick a particular month when they fall due. So estimated and annual returns for US taxpayers should be set up with forms, tasks for everything else. Tasks are very flexible and have a wide variety of frequencies, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or spontaneous events, such as an IRS notice. Up here you could see I've set that up. As specified per client means that the due date settings are set when the task is added at the client level. Optional settings for forms include the ability to flag it as a federal form or a state form. Those aren't required. And when you're ready, if you would like to print a task or a form report, choose this option on the bottom right and give you a report to edit and evaluate your settings. When it is important, crucial, when you're setting up your master tasks and forms, to get your initial parameters to be in compliance with both government and firm requirements. You don't want to get into a situation where you've added 300 master tasks as main tasks at the client level and then decide that the due date was incorrect. In that case, you would need to delete all those tasks from the clients and then change the parameters and re-add the tasks. That's the only way to correctly affect a change at the master task level. Of course, you could leave some of the tasks in there if the parameter change is only minor and add another task such as 1120 SB for small business and use that one and avoid the other one, but in most cases you should delete and re-add the tasks correctly. One final option is the compute start dates on clone and new task form setup. In that option, it automatically requires you to fill in the task form start date at the bottom left. If you leave that unchecked, this is left blank. Now, in that case, what you're suggesting is that I don't know exactly when this stuff is going to be started because clients bring in information at varying dates, and I will fill in the start date when that information becomes available. Certainly on monthly work, you're going to have a target start date, but if you have some group of clients that always brings in the information at the end of the month, as opposed to the ones that bring it in on the first, you could set up 2 monthly bookkeeping tasks. Again, the help in this screen is quite extensive. It's designed to give you all the information you need. Here is a detailed table of all your frequencies, both for tasks and forms, and when you should use a task or a form. Okay, let's move on now to client setup. This screen also opens in add mode. I'm going to add a small business return client that we do an audit on. You are required to fill in the billing partner. Since I made David the default billing partner, he fills in automatically, but if you're a multi-partner firm, you will need to drop that box down and select somebody. Now, there is no client type for an 1120. I'm going to double click to add one. And going over to the more contact information on the bottom right, I can fill in taxpayer IDs, the fiscal year end, and the date of death if this is an estate. The fiscal year end defaults to December, so you normally will only need to change it if you have a non-calendar year. Clients that are no longer active, you should uncheck the active due date. Let's add one other client, see who's already in here. Okay, we need to add one more, clicking the arrow with the asterisk. RJ Jones, Ralph. He is a 1040 client. His year end is December, so I don't even need to click on the more contact information tab. I want to make a few editing changes. I'm going to scroll through my clients in alphabetical order, clicking Form Tools with my cursor located in the Sort Name field. I'm going to click A to Z. And I've left out some client types, so I'm going to look at that field, and then that one's filled in. The next one is as well. But Green Jones is an 1120 bookkeeping. And Small Auto Supplies is an 1120 bookkeeping. I'm going to force the save so I can show you a feature. Double clicking on RJ shows that both Ralph Jones and Small Auto Supplies share the same group ID. Group ID is a way of filtering and grouping clients under common control. The recommended convention is to use the client ID of the lead client in the group as the group ID for all members. We're done with basic client setup, except to mention that if you're using our client relationship module, you want to fill in the address and phone information, you will also need to do that. Let's move on now to quick setup. One of the features in ImagineTime is that key screens can be left open and you can tab between them. I left open the due date setup and utility screen, so I'm going to just jump back there. I'm going to go to quick client setup, refresh the client list. New clients I added now appear. I'm going to quick add the 1040. On the left, select 1040. On the right, holding down the shift key, since clients are sorted in client type order, I can select that group. If I did want to skip somebody, I hold down the control key like that. Our year is 2011. Select copy. I just added 4 work assignments for that client group. Let's now open our Manage Edit Deadline screen and see what we have. We can see our 4 tasks or work assignments, actually they are forms, on the datasheet side, 1, 2, 3, 4. As I click through on the datasheet side, the form side shows the particulars of that particular work assignment. Let's review them. This is Ralph Jones, a 2011 Form 1040. Let's assign it to Sally. We could have done that during quick setup. The default due date, which is automatically calculated based on the master form characteristics, is filled in here. The target start date can be changed, and the final adjusted date can be changed, but that is subject to a permission option, so you can prevent certain staff from doing that. When would you want to change that? Well, let's say that we've agreed with that client to get the return done early, so we're changing that due date to March 15th. Another example would be where you're filing returns that are already late and you have another agreed upon date. The final adjusted date is a flexible tool, and it becomes the primary reporting field if you change the date, and it varies from the default calculation. Other fields that may be of interest is the information received field. If you double click, it generally fills in today's date. Otherwise, you need to pop up the calendar and select it that way. So there are a number of reporting filters on information received and information complete to let you know where the snafus and the hangups are. You can also use a login field, this is optional, to let you know the order in which information was received from clients. There is also a report that reports on that particular field. And let's add a few more tasks. Clicking the arrow with the asterisk, GSA, assign that to Sally, 2011, and let's do some quarterly bookkeeping. Forcing the save creates 4 events, 4 work assignments. They're shown on the right. Let's continue on. GSA, again Sally, and assign them the 1120S. Call Dave for info. That's the primary note. It appears on all reports. If I want to make detailed notes about work progress, I can do that by popping up more notes, problem with 1099, something like that. That's very useful for supervisory review and also in planning the next year's work assignments. So now GSA, let's use the filters now to see what we've got for GSA. Clicking Show Task Filters, choosing GSA, Set Filters, Hide, and here are my tasks. I've got an 1120S and 4 quarterly compilations. Let's add one more. GSA automatically fills in when I'm using a filter. 2011 and the year-end audit. And we'll just say here, get engagement letter. Now this is a calendar year client, and you can see I'm targeting to start this on the 15th of January and finishing it by the end of the 2nd month. In this case, it's a leap year. Let's go back and check that in due date setup and utilities under audit. First month 15th and finish by the 2nd month last day. By the way, always use the last day. Don't pick the 31st, because the last day can be either the 28th, 29th, 30th, or 31st. And you're going to have some difficulties if you choose the 31st. Okay, so we set up a group of tasks now for GSA, including the quarterly comps, the audit, and the 1120S. That's all the work we're doing for them. If I close this screen and reopen it, ImagineTime saves my filter set. This is by user, so it's a convenient way to resume your work session. Let's unfilter our activities and see what else we have. Clear filters, hide. Okay, then we have to set up something for small auto supplies. So again here, monthly bookkeeping work. This is has a computed start date, and it has recurrence. It's a task. So when we add this item, notice on the datasheet side that it has added 12 of them, and it's calendar year bookkeeping. Monthly assignments are calendar year by default. Let's add something else for small. Let's assign that to Sally, and we'll add the corporate return. Forcing the save. Down here I can see that there it is on the bottom of the data sheet. Notice that we did not use a target start date or an auto compute feature. Let's go back over here. On the 1120 we turned off auto compute. So on our manage edit deadline screen, the start date is left blank, and I'm going to fill in something and say I'd like it to start for this client like 10, 15, 12. Here's my due date. Form items, we use the form year convention. Now what that means is that the 2011 year is the year that we start the form. It's going to be completed at the end of the fiscal year of the subsequent period, 9/30/12. And our due date parameters are 2.5 months, so its due date is December 15th. Now, if you're a Canadian taxpayer and you want to use the within year option, let's show an example of the within year option. If I set up small auto supplies for quarterly tasks due in 2011, this is a task, QFE, and when I save it, using the within year option means that the last quarter of this task will end with a client's fiscal year. So the last quarter ends 9/30/11. Those are the basic due date parameters. If I scroll back to the first one, you can see that it backs up to 12/31/10. That's the task within year option. It's different from the form fiscal year option for non-calendar taxpayers. Form option starts in the due date year. The task within year option ends within the due date year. So you have quite a lot of flexibility there. This is explained in detail in recurrence. There's also quite a lot of extensive help when you're in the Manage Edit Deadline screen that will guide you through how to implement these options. Again, once you've set up your master tasks, try and get the parameters right at the start. A couple final things here have to do with your budget. If you're not using the workflow, you can put one budgeted hourly number in. You can also print reports right from the Manage Edit Deadline screen by clicking the Report tab, and that's going to print a report for the current filter with all the basics on it, like period end, start date, due date, who it's assigned to. So just to give you an example, if I wanted to filter this for 1040s, and then I come down to Report and Print, now the report has been modified to include the current filter set. So that's a very convenient reporting mechanism. More extensive reporting is covered in a further training session. On the due date and supplemental reports, you have multiple reporting options, including export options. These reporting options include the ability to report on workflow, subtasks, and also print routing sheets. We cover that in a future session. A couple of final remarks about the Manage Edit Deadline screen. If you're using our basic due date monitor, there are some workflow elements, these status tracking fields. That's explained in our workflow session. If, however, your principal concern is the managing of completion, you're going to mark an item as complete. It'll appear off your tickler list, and you just simply go into the date completed field. If the completion date is today, double click it. If it's not today, select the date when you did complete it. When that is saved, I'm going to force it, it automatically will remove it from tickler lists and from filter views that exclude items that are completed. So to show you an example of that, let's go up to filters. That is, our default status is not complete. If I close and reopen the screen, this item will remove itself, or I can just reset the filters and Betty Boop is gone. If you want to use basic workflow components and you don't have the subtask workflow module, you can still use tracking flow dates here. That's covered in the workflow module coming up in our next session. So before I leave, let's just recap this Manage Edit Deadline screen. The screen has 5 sections: the filter section, which you can show or hide, the main data entry section, which is on the left side in the top. That's where you add new tasks. Then we have some additional tabs where you can enter a budget overall, you can report, and also copy one client template to another client. This lends itself to setting up a master client with groups of activities, and that can be copied out to other clients. If you're using the basic workflow module for the due date monitor, you can fill in status update fields here like started, ready for review, rework, and so on. Okay. The right side of the screen, the datasheet side, is used to review what's in your current filter set and make simple edits. For example, if I wanted to reassign this activity to Sally, I can do it on the datasheet side. Just a very easy way to make some quick edits. Do not add records from the right side. Use the left side for adding new records. Okay, and finally the bottom footer shows the fiscal year end, the partner, and the date of death. That's a recap of the Manage Edit Deadline screen. Thank you for listening to this session, and join us on the next workflow session.